Talent is small compared to commitment. It's having the commitment to keep learning and having the commitment to not quit when it feels like it's difficult.
Having the intention of trying to make money is not the best place to go. That comes with quality content. So you gotta focus on your skills, you gotta focus on your stuff. If you're expecting to sell it, it's probably not gonna sell so much.
My tip is just to start and try, because you never know what you'll learn about yourself. Put less pressure on yourself, and the best thing I can kind of give is to remember to have fun. I think we always treat everything so seriously, and that's okay, but we're constantly in survival mode, and art is supposed to be about having fun, creating worlds, creating characters, showing your heart.
Hey guys, in this episode I was at San Diego Comic-Con interviewing artists. I talked to RossDraws, David Finch, Erik and Peter Hahn about any advice that they would give to people that want to get into it. One of the most common things that people tell me about is that they want to get into working and selling prints at conventions, but they don't know how to start. They don't know which prints to sell, they don't know which cons to go to, they don't have a roadmap to getting started. But often, the general advice from all these people is just to start and try your best. And by the way, if you'd like to support me, please check out the links to the courses in the description. All this content is sponsored by me, so your guys' support really does help me make more content like this. I'm gonna be a YouTuber for a second. Please like and subscribe. That really does help the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. And I've been told that does make a big difference. So thanks again and have a good one.
It's just to try and start. You have your whole entire life ahead of you, and people put too much pressure on themselves to have everything figured out right away. My first convention, I rolled up here with, this very crappy, everything was makeshift. And so I think it's important to realize that you can always improve, you can always get better, you can always learn. Just over the years, I perfected my craft and I try to get better every year, So when I first started, I drew, a lot of fan art and maybe 20% of my own IP, but as the years go on and on, I think the ratio shifts a little bit. And I think it's important to try and figure out what ratio works for you, because there are people out there who love fan art and giving their own style to their own fandom. There are people who love original stuff, and so it's all a gray area, and so it's trying to figure out that kind of formula for you. And usually I look at what's coming out, and so last year Spider-Verse was really big, and I've never done a Spider-Verse print, and so that one did really, really well for me. It got me a chance to create for Spider-Verse, which I love. A lot of my friends worked on it, and so it was really cool. Yeah.
How often do you make a print that you think is going to sell really well, and then it ends up not performing as well as you might think?
Yeah. Oh man. So this is a very interesting question. I think it's 50-50, to be honest. Sometimes the stuff that I don't think is going to do well does really well, and vice versa. And so I feel like you can never really totally plan, but the best kind of formula that I've gone is just what's releasing, And so I wanted to do a Deadpool versus Wolverine print, but I didn't have time, and so I don't want to affect my mental health by trying to cram and create something just for the convention. So I feel like a good formula is trying to figure out what's coming out that you resonate with. I think you shouldn't do something just for the money. I feel like there should be some attachment involved. Maybe you grew up with it, or maybe there's some love involved, because you don't want to be selling your soul as an artist,
Seems like a big part of working at a convention is almost feeling dealing with rejection, Yeah. Most people realistically actually won't be interested in your booth.
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts for dealing with that sort of thing?
Man, okay, all right. I feel like I've just reached a point in my life where I'm starting to figure things out for me. Before I was so attached to the outcome and oh my God, I hope this does well, and you get in your head about this kind of stuff, because this is kind of your craft, your bread and butter, you want to make a living out of this. And so lately I've been just you know what? I'm just gonna hope for the best and not worry about it. Take the pressure off yourself, because you can't control about this stuff, right? And so don't stress about things you can't control, and kind of worry about things you can control, and do your best. And when you've done your best, let it go and just enjoy the ride.
How to get into selling art for the first time? Because I think a lot of people who are training or trying to get better have a hard time feeling like they're good enough to start selling and monetizing their stuff. And at conventions, you're going around, you're selling prints or doing signings and stuff. And I guess kind of want to get your thoughts on the first steps to monetizing your artwork.
There are so many ways to go about starting to sell your work. And it is a difficult thing when you don't have a built-in audience, and none of us start with that. If you're getting published, it makes it much easier, but that's also its own problem. But just in terms of just selling your work, I really recommend eBay. You can put your work up there, if people like it, you can auction for it, and you can really sell work for almost nothing, which is not ideal. But you start to establish sales and you start to establish interest, and that's really where you get the ball rolling. And once you have just a couple of collectors that are interested in your work, your prices can start growing very quickly. I think just being willing to never give your work away for free, but being willing to take a bit of a loss and take a few hits early on can really help. And I do think there are other marketplaces. eBay kind of hits me. I'm an older artist, so that's been around for a while. I'm sure there are other ones too. At conventions, it's a tough one because you're sitting down with a whole room full of very established artists, and it can be difficult. But if you can put up banners of your work and to put your best work up there and make it as attractive as possible, you get people walking by that are looking for young artists especially. It can be very lucrative as a collector to collect an artist that people aren't familiar with. You get stuff cheaper, and then when the artist gets more known, it becomes more valuable. And so there are collectors that look for that, and that can be a good opportunity.
Do you have any stories or anything from when you first started?
My first convention that I ever went to, I was already with Top Cow as a professional, which is part of Image Comics, and we were very popular, Top Cow, at the time. And so I was sitting with artists that were very established, and I remember people coming up with their comics and they wanted sketches. We didn't even charge. It was all free at the time. People would look at my name tag and then just keep walking, and that happened all day. It was actually at San Diego. It was my first convention.
Okay, crazy.
And it was tough, but I did get a few people to stop. They had no idea who I was. I had nothing out. And I drew a few sketches, and hopefully people liked them. They said they did, but people are nice. So it was a tough go. It took me a couple of conventions in. By the time I had a few books out before I actually had people that wanted me to sign something, and I think the first time that happened was a big deal.
And everyone talks about being patient, just taking your time. Don't worry about rushing or no one caring about your work, because it'll happen eventually if you just do it for long enough.
You have to be persistent. You have to be the kind of person that doesn't give up. I've seen so many people quit. And to me, the number one thing, it's talent is important, but talent is small compared to commitment. It's having the commitment to keep learning, and having the commitment to not quit when it feels like it's difficult.
Right.
So I feel like I'm not answering your question.
I mean, I was just interviewing another few people about that. It always comes back to just persistence and not giving up in the face of failure. Like, it's always difficult at every level, right?
So we have EM Gist here.
Yeah, okay, right.
Did you ever hit a point where you felt like you wanted to quit?
Yeah, right.
That I wanted to quit?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good question. Not like a period, but yeah, there were moments, certainly moments, but I usually pass pretty quickly. And it's never that I wanted to quit, I just didn't think anyone else wanted to see what I was doing.
Right, like early on, did you ever think this is why am I even?
Yeah, am I just doing this to make $1?
Yeah.
And that's a bad feeling. Right. It's like there's other ways to go make $1 that aren't as punishing. The thing is, social media and AI feed into that. It feed into the self-doubt, big time.
And you see, this artist has this many likes, and my picture that I put up has this many likes, and you can get in your head about that. Now that's a new thing. Yeah, for me, I'd put out a comic, and you'd see where it is on the sales charts. And this artist that you hate, you hate them because they're so good. Their book is there on the sales chart, and you see that every month, and it's that can eat at you. And I don't think there's an escape from it. I'm sure Jim Lee.
Stuff like Wizard, which was almost like the precursor to social media.
Well, they had
like
the top 10 list. Where are you on the top 10 list, or are you on it? Or I'm sure Jim Lee. There are times that he thinks, wow, like, you know, how did all this happen? Do I deserve this? I'm sure like every artist out there has those moments.
He has an instructional video. I can't remember if it was part of those VHS tapes they did, but he was doing a demo, and he even talked about how every morning he gets up and does warm-ups because he's sure he's forgot how to draw. And this is Jim Lee. Yeah, I bet it's still true today.
16, when you first started, how did you eliminate doubt? I have doubt all the time. I don't think it ever goes away.
Yep. Yeah, you can't get that good without having that kind of interest.
A little bit of self-loathing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Or a lot of self-loathing.
Well, and it doesn't go away, right? Like, no matter how much you read and no matter how many hours you get, it's still there then.
I think it's core to your being that drives you to get good in the first place.
Right.
So, yeah, if it's just core to who you are, it does not go away.
And there are artists for which I do think, or for whom I think it goes away, and you can see it in their work, you know?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, they start buying into the hype a little bit, and then their work degrades.
And I've seen that. It's always heartbreaking, like when it's an artist that you love and you see it start to fade.
Yeah. It's not just a shifting of gears that maybe is at your personal taste. You see it objectively, their work is not as good.
Yeah.
For guys at your level who are already established professionals, how do you work past it when you have those feelings?
You kind of don't have a choice.
Yes.
I mean, it's like you have to go to work, and eventually if you keep going to work, then it dulls. It doesn't go away, but you just don't hear as much because you're like, well, people are depending on me. If I don't get this done on my deadline, then it falls on someone else's table, and they have to do something to make up for the fact that I didn't get my work done. So I guess you get numb to it a little bit because you don't have any choice.
Yeah.
You have to go to work.
It's great the days when you feel really inspired, but it's not always, and the deadlines are always. So it's just part of being a professional, and it is. I still think, the willingness to learn and the willingness to work through those kinds of times when you don't feel it and still get the work in is what makes a career.
Yeah.
I've also heard people talk about like having things outside of art that are validating to you other than just the art with it. So like running, like you do.
Oh yeah, the diversions. Yeah, it's important. Yeah. Ways of getting outside of your own head.
Yeah.
Whether for me, exercising is a great way to do that, but it can be reading, or I know a lot of artists play musical instruments. It's just a way of shifting gears and kind of getting out of your own head and dulling the noise a little bit. A lot of techniques for dulling the noise, really.
I always have some kind of. I wish it was music, but it's not. It's not diverting enough. I always have something going on, in the background, and then I've got family and grass to cut, and there's all kinds. So that helps too, just to have a day off and just do some housework.
People always think that once you reach a certain level of fame or a level, you don't have to cut grass anymore. You don't have to clean the toilet. But that's still an everyday part of what you guys are up to.
Yeah, at least in comics, yeah.
I don't have a grass cutting person. Well, I do.
No,
that would be me.
Plus, there's also the fact that people think that. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself particularly successful or famous, but if you are, you don't think about it. When you're at home working, you're just you working. It's not until you come to something like this where you get a little bit of a glimpse of that. But it's not like that on a daily basis. You're just like anyone else, going to work, doing your job. There's not someone there cheering you on. I mean, maybe my wife a little bit, especially when I'm particularly feeling down. She's a good cheerleader, but it's not. People aren't constantly coming to your house, giving you ego boosts. So it's if anything, it's a little bit the other way around because of social media. People always looking to kind of put you down a little bit.
And that is another thing that you have to learn how to deal with, is not everybody's going to like what you do, and you can't please everybody, and you have to be willing to kind of, roll with the hits. And I have any advice on that one. It's if people are being negative, which happens, don't fight with them online.
No.
Just don't do it. It never ends well. I've seen people do it, and it's never a good idea. And at the same point, it's so important to remember that we're doing this for fans of the medium, and they are entitled to their opinion. And the most passionate people are the ones with the opinions, and those are the fans that we value the most.
Yeah.
So when they hate what I do, it hurts, but I respect it because they are who we do this for.
I mean, of course, that's always an intention, for people that are interested in creating creating and making content that they want to be able to share it in some way.
Yeah.
At first, it could be a hobby, kind of exploring their personal skills, but eventually, there's always the idea of being able to like actually sell it, make a viable living off of it too.
Yeah.
But still, I would say the best approach is coming to a place like this. Having the intention of trying to make money is not the best place to go.
Yeah.
You know, that comes with quality content.
Yeah.
So you got to focus on your skills, you got to focus on your stuff. If you're expecting to sell it, it's probably not going to sell so much.
Right.
So my suggestion at that point then is focus on your skill set, make sure you make some good network connections, and plant seeds.
Yeah.
But it's not about the current sale, it's about the sale next year.
Right.
So you're trying to build a market, build an audience at that point.
Yeah.
So for me at Comic-Con, I learned that very quickly because I printed a series of books, came to the show Artist Alley not knowing anybody, set it up there thinking, yeah, I'll sell those books like $10 a pop. It didn't sell a book, you know? But then people came up and they saw my other work, saying like, oh, this piece, that piece, that's kind of cool. So then the following year, usually those people come back to the same show. And they saw that work and they recognized it and they started buying that stuff. So first you gotta find out, well, what is gonna sell in the first place. So I printed a bunch of stuff, not knowing what's gonna actually be picked up, and I do a bit of R&D, a little bit of research. So as people kind of notify me, hey, this stuff is interesting, I wanna buy this one over here, then I expand on that.
Yeah.
Planting the seed for next year, and then I grow the crop, harvest it, you know?
Well, it seems like people who do conventions at first might be discouraged by the lack of interest or sales their first year, and I think it could be potentially inspiring or encouraging to hear people that they really admire struggling their first few years.
Of course. And it can struggle even after many years, because the thing is that the market is always fluctuating, and you gotta kind of play a game of prediction to some degree, and it's a hard game to play because you don't know exactly always what's gonna happen. You come to the show expecting, hey, I sold a bunch of books last year, I'll bring the same thing back, but then all of a sudden it doesn't sell. So you always have to be able to adapt, but give a lot of options eventually.
Right.
In the beginning, you can only maybe able to make one or two products like prints and books, but eventually you gotta create a lot of diversity of pieces. Again, I have like prints, books, original sculptures, stickers, whatnot. And as you grow that content, then the potential sales start to grow from there too.
Yeah.
Again, today, this show in particular right now, books are not selling as much. And last year, books sold really well. This year, I'm getting a long list of commissions, original art. People want originals. And then of course, different markets, different locations, the conventions changes as well too. I'm gonna go to New York Comic Con in October. I had no idea what to expect because I never sold there before. So I go there not expecting to sell, going there to learn.
Yeah.
And then I'll hopefully go back next year after that, sell more from there. But as I said, it changes constantly.
Yeah, and it's constantly shifting, and you're paying attention to the trends and what's happening in the market. And if you didn't change for 5 years, would you suspect you'd maintain your same level of business? Or
no,
yeah,
I mean, I can't say that some people can't, and I'm sure there are that bring the same thing back and they have the same sort of stuff, and they have a certain loyal customer base that will always buy their stuff. So they hit a certain plateau and they may stay there, but that might be good enough for them, you know? But for me, people are always looking for the new best thing.
Yeah.
So especially in terms of the kind of content I make, it's a fast turnaround kind of stuff. I myself also personally don't like showing up without something new.
Right.
That's just me personally though.
Yeah. If you see a trend that's happening in the market for something that you might not have much interest in, do you try to find interest in that thing and try to find a way to make it interesting, or you kind of...
I personally don't, but I can understand why some others would, because you want to be able to compete against them as well too. So you see what's available, what are they doing, you kind of like walk around a little bit doing some research as to like how are they presenting, what kind of work do they put out. I did that for the first year, like, well, what kind of sketchbooks do they make, how do they make them, you know, how's it presented. But for me, it's like, I've always found that following the trends of certain things, I put it out there, a lot of the times it's not picked up.
Yeah.
I think it's because of the fact that one, the kind of content they're actually even selling most of the times ends up being fan artwork. So fan art usually gets picked up pretty quickly, but I don't really do that a lot.
Yeah.
So my format or that kind of trend is not really matching to what I normally do. So I don't want to force it.
Yeah.
The more you force it, it's felt in the product, and people don't need to pick it up. So I always have to kind of resort to my, interests of things, which is always come back down to original art. I'll put my books.
How do you feel like you detach yourself from the, I guess, reception of your artwork and people buying it to your personal emotional attachment to it?
It's hard to separate them at times, because you're investing so much of yourself into it, especially if it's like your own original work. If it's fan art stuff, oh, this particular year, people are interested in something else, like a brand, and they're not picking up this other one. So then you just kind of, like we're talking about, reading the trend of things. But if it's original work, it stings a little bit more because you invest a lot of yourself into it. It's really you opening yourself up. And when it's not bought or when it's not looked at, it's hard to process that.
Yeah.
For one, it's just purely experience. You know, you kind of get stung a couple times, you get used to the feeling. You know, but you start to build a tough skin, and you take on critique, feedback quite a bit as well too. But doing it in a way that's constructive, and being able to apply it to the products you're actually making, and seeing how you can compromise. What can I do that is still genuine to my originality, but what can I also do to make sure it's designed in a manner for other people that like it?
If somebody is interested in getting started in this kind of, profession, what do you recommend they do?
I mean, first is just get a lay of the land, attend a lot, walk around, see what piques your interest, what grabs your eye. And it's not about like walking up to a table and analyzing it, but I'm talking about even like far distance.
Yeah.
It's all about line of sight. So how are they presenting it in a way that's catching your eye to get you over there? And then so from there, you learn about layout. You learn about then the products after that. The product itself is kind of the last thing that they see. What they see is from a distance that what you're doing first. So what do I use right now is live drawing. So as I live sketch and put it on a monitor, people can see that from a distance and they're drawn to it. Yeah. And then next tier, then I show the products. Yeah. Next year after that, I have a conversation. And then so the actual verbal selling is actually one of those last steps.
Yeah.
But the first thing, line of sight, is where I go first.
Right.